Thanks, everybody. This is going to be a really slide-heavy presentation because the McClung Collection has so many cool images of Andrew Johnson over the years. So I'm going to go through it pretty quickly and focus more on the hotel than its life as the office building, as a lot of you might have done it for the past few decades. So in 1925, the population of Knoxville was around 150,000 people. It was growing. The nearest hotel was the Farragut across the street there. It was about 10 years old. The Akin down the end of Gay Street was about 20. So the city's growing. There's talk of building the Smoky Mountains into a national park. It might be time to build a brand new hotel. So a group of investors got together, and September 5th, 1925, New Central, it's first announced that the Tennessee Terrace is going to open. It's going to be a 16-story hotel with 300 rooms and costs about $1.5 million. That's $27 million in today's money. A.B. Bowman and Son were the architects, and the Worsham brothers were chosen to build it. And of course, nothing gets built sometimes without things being torn down. Official sort of first activity, please hold your questions to the end, was Monday, January 11th, 1926. Oh, he's requesting the volume.
Pump up the volume.
Pump up the volume. So that's when the first work first started, and then the excavation started on July 8th. Just going to show you some images of Thompson Brothers took of as it was being built. We have the Knoxville Center from November 7th, 1926. People are very excited about this hotel being built. And that's a Thompson Brothers photo they use as well. I don't know if you can see the dates in the bottom corner there, but that's December 29th, 1926. That is January 31st, 1927. Different view. And again, this was big news. It was going to be, ended up being the tallest building in East Tennessee for 50 years. Everybody was excited to have the new Tennessee Terrace going to be open. But by the time it came to open, it was no longer called the Tennessee Terrace. Now why that is, I haven't been able to determine, but the Knoxville Journal held a contest asking readers to write in and suggest names. William Blount was one, probably an obvious one, because of course White Mansion was just across the street there. Andrew Johnson, I'm still sort of puzzled as to why that one won the day. I think a lot of people are. He was obviously president, but he wasn't elected. He was impeached. Not the most stellar reputation. I think around this time, the 20s, people were trying to some people were trying to maybe rehab him a bit and his reputation tarnished, but it still seems odd that a hotel of this magnitude with such little connection to some name for someone with a little connection to Knoxville. Another interesting crowdsourced idea, the Sentinel put out calls for readers to suggest things for the hotel. It's a good idea, it's a good promotion. You have people do the creative work for you for free. Well, it's not free, it's $25, which is about $500 in today's. A lot of good suggestions. Let old folks make whoopee. Square dancing, light opera, and movie night. Of course, I thought that was a great idea. Someone suggested they have dances there, film the dancers, and then show them at next week's dance. And I kind of like this idea. I got infatuated with the whole thing about the suggestions. The winner ended up being Margaret Shell, who suggested radios in the rooms, so you could page guests, art exhibits, arrows pointing ways to rooms, and supper dances. And I feel pretty good because if you were at the event last week, we checked a lot of boxes that were suggested. We showed movies, we had a band, we had dances, we had an art exhibit up there. As Nathan was discussing earlier, we might not have had the best directional signs and arrows and ways to egress, but was what it was. Formal opening. There's two ads announcing the December 17th opening. I came across this and was kind of curious. It's a tiny little notice that UT's Prize Seer Perfection was going to be butchered and served at the opening of the Andrew Johnson. And so I dug around more and found this article, which went into like kind of a little too much detail, really. Bull weighed 870 pounds, a staff of French cooks brought from New York City, prepared perfection for the dining table.
I'm not sure I can eat a bull with the name.
And so the formal opening is December 17th, 1929. They announced there are going to be 2 orchestras. Now I put this here to emphasize that music has always been an important part of the Andrew Johnson Hotel. Maynard Baird and Southern Serenaders played the opening night, they played a New Year's Eve party, and they would continue to play. It's actually broadcast from the roof. This article says if they get it in time. They did in fact get it in time, and opening night you could hear the band. According to this article, when they had a game announced over the air, to be heard all the way down at Gay and Central. So that's a pretty big loudspeaker, pretty loud. Obviously, WNOX broadcasts out of the Andrew Johnson Hotel for a while. There's Mr. Lowell Blanchard leaning out the window there in a particularly amusing pose. There's been some question as to whether or not the midday merry-go-round actually started in the hotel or not. We do know it says here that it's broadcasting from Market Hall, and this was in March of 1935, so, 36. The story goes that in 1935, late 1935, the merry-go-round started there, and it was so popular, and the guests were so wild and rowdy that they were asked to leave the hotel. WNOX did in fact move its studios down to Gay Street, to 110 Gay Street, I think, in May of that year. So there could be some truth to that. At any rate, it had outgrown Andrew Johnson by that point. I think this is cute. This is a little article that appeared a few years later. Mountain views in the daytime, at night, the moon and stars and a million lights blinking out over the city and on into the distance. Perfect setting, you think. Perfect picture for young love, and you're right. It was the Andrew Johnson Hotel Roof, 17 stories up. High school youths discovered it. They take the elevator to WNX studios and offices. Through a screen door on the roof, then a dark corner, the moon, the stars, the lights. Oh, and you. But now, alas, young love is thwarted. The screen door is closed. A stern-faced man keeps. I got a stern-faced man is sitting over there. He would never deny anyone. This did Jones and the Commandos. Music continued. They were sort of became the house band in the 1940s and 50s. So again, it remained a center of like a social hub. Of course, it's known for its big sign. It's 50 feet tall. That was quite a spectacle as well. This is not a terrible great. Yeah, it's pixelated pretty bad, but somebody climbed onto the sign as a stunt to show how big it was, and if you can make that out, he's about 3 letters there, so that gives you some sense of scale. Just want to show you some photos now of exteriors and interiors. That's a great Bowman rendering of what the hotel is going to look like. You really get a sense of the Thompson Brothers took most of these, but they show up. The hotel shows up in the background of so many other shots, even if that's not what you're intending to shoot, such as the construction of the Henry Street Bridge. There it is looming in the background. I think that's a fantastic shot. Now some interior views. Here we have the lobby. There's the mezzanine, and you can just make out the marble floors that are still there under those rugs. That's a lounge sitting area. Another view, there's so many angles of photographs of these with these clouds, very dramatic landscape shots. It made for a good subject. Anybody recognize that building? The Chisholm Tavern. And so that's at the bottom middle there. So a lot of talk about the Andrew Johnson Hotel goes into all the celebrities that stay there. And that is fascinating and interesting, especially the Hank Williams story, right? But hotels around the world, celebrities stay in them all the time, and I sort of think that's like, it's an interesting part of the story. But I think a bigger part of the story are the people who work there and people who, Knoxvillians who congregated there. Knoxville was all, the hotel was always a place where people would meet, even city citizens, not just hotel guests. But it served as a meeting place, dining place, dancing. You could tell with the newspaper coverage of advertising the orchestras, it wasn't out-of-town people that it was communicating to. And so when we think about the staff and the people who worked there, no surprise at the time, this was not become any hotel. Most of the staff, porters and cooks, doormen, were African American. The gentleman over here on the left, right, is William Andrew Johnson. And he's particularly interesting because he was the last surviving enslaved person, unlike Andrew Johnson. And he worked at the hotel as a boy. He was working as a cook at the Rutledge Inn, and newspaper stories had been written about him, so it was known who he was. And the Andrew Johnson Hotel hired him almost as an attraction. Multiple stories appeared in newspapers about him. Ernie Pyle interviewed him. It became quite a thing that a person named for Andrew Johnson, who was once enslaved, was now working there. He did meet President Roosevelt. President Roosevelt was here in 1934, of course, to play Norris Dam, and he wanted to meet him then. He dressed up and thought he was going to, but he missed the opportunity. So Roosevelt invited him to the White House, where he presented him with a cane with both of their names inscribed in it. Bill Murrah sort of uncovered this story back in 2001, I think, and since then, that cane has been on exhibit, traveled, and been the subject of stories itself. I think it's now at the Beck Center. Mm-hmm. But just one interesting person who worked there. If you start digging around the newspapers, you find the name of guests, you'll find the name of other employees, and of course, all of them had very interesting, rich lives of their own. Another great photo, and I show it to highlight the Tennessee Bankers Convention going on. Again, AJ was a place where a lot of conventions and a lot of organizations would meet. There's the SO clinic. And I like this shot because this is the reverse. We had a big screen in this room. This was the grand ballroom. And last Friday we had a big screen up there on the other end of it. But it was used for all sorts of purposes. The Knoxville Times newspaper in 1941 ran a special Andrew Johnson edition where they did it in conjunction with them for hotel guests. And I just think that's a really unique thing. Pour through it and see all the advertisements for and activities that were going around the city at the time. And also call your attention to the schedule of events. Every day there are multiple organizations, either local ones or ones out of town meeting there. So again, the idea that this was a meeting space and a place that people downtown, that's why we named the event Meet Me at the AJ, because a lot of people would go there just to hear music, to dance, to eat. And I'm going to sort of wind down here with, we focus so much, understandably, on the 1930s and 40s shots of the AJ because they're fantastic. But of course, every hotel, every building goes through rehab and goes through redesign. And here's an interesting brochure from 1958. Photographer Bill Tracy did the shots for these. So we have the brochure and we have the original photos that give you a sense of what it looked like and what the redesign was like. So there's two rooms we saw earlier, and you see what they're looking like in 58. That's what a double bedroom would look like at the time. Here's the parlor. Johnson Hall. So there you got the big hall, and they want you to feel like you're dining in the tradition of the Old South. That's something that runs throughout this brochure, is they're conjuring images of the Old South. So that's the kind of branding and design they were leaning into then. There's the buffet table. That's European style, I guess. Hollowed out watermelon. And there's another picture of the ballroom. Those wood floors, they're, who knows if they're there, there's the carpet on top of them now. So in 58, those look like some pretty refurbished nice wood floors.
There's actually a whole floor built in there now. They split that into 2 floors, that room.
Oh,
It's
yeah?
gotta be torn out, yeah.
There you have it. I love this shot, except the penthouse. This is elegance. This is as good as it got if you were staying at the Andrew Johnson Hotel in 1958. And we have the original photo, so I just wanted to share it. It's a mixed motif going on here. You've got sort of like medieval tapestry with sort of Greek style on the lamp. Very, very loud. And then finally, there's been a lot of talk about the swimming pool. A lot of people remember the swimming pool being on the roof. Some people don't remember where the swimming pool was, but these photographs here show us. Clearly you can see the courthouse right across the street, and you see the Sherman-Williams building next to it. If we look at this photo, taken in front of Andrew Johnson, and then do a little close-up here, you see where the Sherman-Williams building is. That area right there is the pool. It's right inside the hotel. Sort of where the courtyard is and the entrance to the atrium now. And if you have any doubt that that's where it is, our good friend Bert Benson from the Dawson News Sentinel, I'll allow you to read that. And so it was kind of downhill for the AJ at that point to redesign it. Other hotels and buildings came along and it had lost a lot of the grandeur that it had in the 30s and 40s. And by 1978, you could get a new lease on life at Andrew Johnson Hotel for $475 a day. Into the 80s, I think it's student housing. There was some UT student housing there when they ran out of room. So situation similar to that happened a few years ago, I guess, at UT. Then preservation movement started happening. Knox Heritage swarmed, people were trying to save the Bijou. So some interested parties took interest in saving the AJ. And the best way to do that was not to convert it back into a hotel, but to make it into office space. So that's what it was from the mid-80s on. Of course, Knox County schools, Knox County bought the building at a pretty controversial move. Moved the schools in there where they were until just a couple of years ago. And that's the past. And Nathan is going to join us.